Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Real Estate Scoop with Stacy. We're so excited to have you here today, and we have a special guest, Amy Switzer. Welcome, Amy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Real quick about Amy, she started her business 20 years ago, but she's been appraising since 1992, and she worked for years during high school and college with her dad, who also had an appraisal business. I guess it runs in the blood, right, Amy?
Yeah, now my brother is too. We're all appraisers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, well, we wanted to share all of your great knowledge today, or at least some of it, about appraisals and what is an appraisal and all that kind of stuff. So why don't we start at the beginning? So tell us why an appraisal is important when in a real estate transaction.
Well, basically, the mortgage company or the bank, the lender, wants to know that if they had to foreclose on the property for any reason, that the value of the property is there. So that's why we do it, and that's why they need it, is for the purpose of, I guess, and you hope that it never goes to that point, but as we've seen in the past, it does. So they need to have some kind of, I can't this morning.
Some kind of proof that it's
that the value is actually there, not just
right.
That they're going to pay what they want to pay.
Right. So what happens if the appraisal amount comes in lower than the contract price? What happens?
Oh, all kinds of things can happen. You probably know that sometimes the contract will fall through. Sometimes the buyer will bring money to the table. Sometimes they try to call me and get me to do things to the appraisal, which is not legal.
But you can challenge it, right? You can challenge it.
With FHA, it's a little different, because once the appraisal is done for FHA, then it is with the property. If it's a conventional loan, it's not it's not tied to the property, so they could go to another lender and use another appraiser to try to get that value.
There's some other kind of loans out there, like you hear I'm doing a VHDA or some other things. Like, are those different or?
I don't. Well, VHDA is very similar to FHA. And then there's VA, which I do not appraise for VA. You have to be on a panel for that. And I never tried to get on the list.
Right.
And that's a completely different thing. And I think that the appraisal, though, is also connected to the property for VA. But you probably know better.
What would someone do if they're, say, selling their house and they want their house to appraise for more? Like, what are suggestions, or what are things you're looking for when you're doing the appraisal that you say, oh, that brings value?
If a house is older, if it's been remodeled, like kitchens, bathrooms, and sometimes those are almost dollar for dollar. If you put $20,000 in a kitchen, you're probably going to get $20,000 worth of value back out. And you always have to do routine maintenance. People expect the water heater to work and the roof to be
not leaking.
No, not leaking. You don't want to have a leak upstairs in your bedroom.
Right.
And all of those, HVAC, all that needs to be in working order. But then, like I said, if it's an older home, if you do improvements, decks and screen porches, patios, pools, unfortunately do not add as much value as they cost to put in. And people will argue, but it cost me $250,000 to put in this pool. I'm like, sorry.
Should have asked somebody before, right?
I mean, that's a deterrent. People don't want a house with a pool.
Right. Or if you're going to stay the next 15 years, then maybe that's a great, asset for your property. But if you think maybe we're going to move in 2 or 3 years, but right now pools are hot, aren't they?
Oh yeah. Our kids asked the other day, can we put a pool in the backyard? No.
Well, I think with all the pools closed, that people are, saying, hey, well, we'll just move and then, we'll have a pool this summer. So since houses are going quickly and there's low inventory, as we know. So anyway, can I request a appraisal prior to putting my house on the market? That was one of our questions for today. So what should you do if you're going to list your house and you're worried about your value, or you want to know how much value your home is going to bring as far as the appraisal? Should you do an appraisal beforehand, and is that something that you do?
I do. I get a request for those more often than I would think.
Right.
Because you guys as realtors, you do your comparative market analysis and give them a value. But I have a lot of people who do say, and if somebody's going to try to list it on their own, so I will go and do an appraisal for them so they can get a list price. So that is something that I do, and then I'll give them suggestions. I've had people ask, what can I do to make it more marketable, and I'll give suggestions. If you need to paint, you recarpet, those kind of items. And I've had, and I have friends who'll just ask me just to come over and just give them a little freebie and see what can I do.
Right. So if you just put in carpet, though, that's not really enough. That's not really enough to say like it's better than the one next door if it's the same model and square foot.
No, because I adjust on the appraisal that we use a standard. It's called the URAR form.
Okay.
And we only adjust for certain items. And if you can't adjust for everything. It's unrealistic. The underwriters don't want to look at all that, and they want big items. So most of the time, if somebody just put in new carpet or painted, I will list that on the appraisal. And if I see right now with the MLS system, you guys take all those wonderful pictures for us, which is fantastic. And if I can see that the carpet looks old or bad, I might make an adjustment. But you usually expect the carpet and the paint to be relatively recent.
Livable order.
Right. So if they just paint and carpet, it might show better, I think. And you might get a contract faster.
Right.
For an appraisal standpoint, I'm really not going to make a huge adjustment for new carpet and new paint.
Well, that's what we always suggest to folks, commercial and residential. It's like, make it look appealing, and if it looks appealing, you're going to have more traffic. It's just like anything else. It's when you put that item in the front window at, wherever, Macy's, let's just say, that's going to attract people to want to come in. And so that's why the pictures are so important, to make sure that is attention, getting. So, and that's what you're looking back at the pictures, because I'm sure, you probably do in a day, like multiple appraisals. And so it's probably hard to remember what they all look like when you got home, right?
Yeah. And that day, the carpet and paint definitely helps, but you're not going to get big adjustments.
Right.
You get big adjustments for kitchens.
Right.
And it also depends on the price range of the house. If you have a $150,000 townhouse in Manassas, your adjustment for a new kitchen is not going to be as much as if you live in a $2 million house in McLean.
Right.
So adjustments are also based on percentage. I don't take a percentage for kitchens, but it's going to be a lot more for a larger home.
So what if you have a house for sale and you're going through the process, you have a contract, but there's not another house that's like yours? Maybe not the same floor plan, or maybe it's maybe yours is updated, really updated, and the other ones aren't updated. Like what should people expect?
That's a rough one. The underwriters have certain rules and regulations, which sometimes it makes it harder on us, because typically for appraisal, in a perfect appraisal, an underwriter is going to want 3 comps that have settled within a mile within the last 6 months, same square footage, same updates. But it doesn't always.
Right. Perfect world, right?
But and I've gotten a lot of appraisals right now that are not perfect.
Yeah.
So I will have to go back in time. I can go back usually never more than a year. So you can go, and then I can also expand the market area. But then it also gets into school systems. They want them all within the same school system, within the same zip code.
Right.
So I try to do my best to find, if I have a property that's different, to find one that's that's within the time period, within that 6-month time period. I try to find one that's within that mile radius. I try to cover all the bases. If there's one house, a pool is a good example. The underwriter will always want to see one comp with a pool. So I have to find one comp, even if it's not similar.
Right.
If they have one comp that if the subject has a brand new kitchen, they always want one comp with a brand new kitchen. What they call it, they don't want to see across the board adjustments. They don't want me to go across all 3 comps and make the same adjustment to that property.
I see. So what if there's a foreclosure or a short sale in the neighborhood?
I try not to use them unless it's a foreclosure.
Property itself, the subject.
Yes, if the subject property is a foreclosure, then I use other foreclosure sales. If it's not, I try never to do that. And it's gotten easier because, like, as you see, we're not seeing a whole lot of those anymore. But if it is a foreclosure, then I typically make some type of adjustment because that property is usually not in the same shape as an arm's length transaction.
Right.
But sometimes they are, and sometimes it's fine, and I don't have to do anything.
Right.
But most of the times those properties are not in great condition, so I will have to make a condition adjustment.
Right. So can you use properties that are under contract and not quite closed yet?
Yes. The rules, most of my lenders want 3 settled sales, and then they want 1 active or under contract. So I use that as additional backup for for the 3 settled sales. Right. And if it is a difficult property, sometimes I'll put 4, 5, 6 settled sales in. I did one the other day and it was awful. Right. I worked on that appraisal for hours and hours and hours, and I think I had 6 settled sales and then 1 active, just to provide additional backup because the house was very different.
Right.
And I didn't have anything that was like this house. So the more information I provide, the better off it is for the lender, and then they don't question appraisals, they don't come back.
Right.
So that one was a long one, but it worked out because I had 1 tiny little question from the underwriter, and that was it.
That's good. That's good. Well, I know that it's going to be tough because we're in this market now, which, we seem to be busy and things are rolling along, but even 3 or 4 months ago, the prices weren't up this much. So going back 6 months, if there's nothing like the house, but there's something under contract right now that's like it, then maybe that's the one that you use, right?
Right. And then I'll state that because of what the situation is going on recently, that the prices weren't there, and now there's almost every appraisal I do that's a sale, they're telling me there's multiple contracts, bidding wars.
Yes.
I see the contract, they send it to me, so I know.
Right.
And I will just, I can just write narrative and say that this is the situation. These under contracts are better representation of what the market is today. And I mean, most of the underwriters I hope they know what's going on.
Yeah, no, I think so.
I hope they haven't been living under a box somewhere. So they know, and they know the situation, and I haven't had any problems with that.
Right. That's great. So what are the appraisers and you doing differently now that we have been, due to this pandemic, that we're in this kind of strange time that we've all never seen? So what are we doing different?
Right now, I am getting a lot of desktop appraisals, and I will get exterior only. And I personally do not like to do that and I've even called the lender and said, I will go into the house for the same price and do it because I don't want to do an appraisal where I do not have firsthand knowledge of the property.
And a big thing is smell. We're forgetting smell. I mean, I can walk in a house and know immediately if the house is, moldy or musty or what have you. It's something's going on. There's an odor.
Mhm.
And so mold is a strong word. It's not always mold just because it smells musty. So just want to clarify that. But
Could be cats and dogs and lots of
right, right. And just different ways people do things, right? So,
right. If I do a desktop or exterior only and it's a sale, I always call the agent and I mean, I obviously look at the listing. I will pull all the listings from the MLS and include them in the report and state that, we have a new addendum.
okay.
And if it was desktop or exterior, we include that, and it basically states, because of COVID and the pandemic, we're trying to keep people safe and we're not going in. So it's kind of a cover your butt thing for us.
Sure.
But I always call the owner if it's a refi. I always call the agent if it's a sale. Especially if it's vacant, I'll tell the agent I'm just going to go anyway. I would just rather do that for myself. And if it's I want to see the house, because I can't always take somebody else's word for it, because they're not a disinterested third party.
Right.
So they're going to tell you stuff that you want to hear.
Right. Exactly. So I was going to ask you about the going in, and what was my question? I lost my train of thought, but just more about COVID, and just if you think that it's oh, I know what it was. I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought. About all the refinances that you're doing during COVID, because the rates dropped.
Right. Yes.
And so you've been extra busy probably because you have refis going on, you have purchases going on. And then, I mean, is it more than usual in your opinion, or?
Usually the summer is typically a busier time for me, and it's been pretty steady. I thought, well, the rates are good, so
right,
people are refinancing, and I think because of people, possibly losing jobs, and there are more refinancing going on.
So if you lost your job, can you refinance?
I don't think so.
Okay, I didn't.
But maybe pay cuts. Yeah, because you're not going to qualify if you don't have a job.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So
but I guess maybe, I don't know. I don't know why the refis seem to be up. Well, the rates are really
so good.
Yeah, but I know that the lenders that I've talked to said they have really cracked down on qualifying for loans. So when this first started, well, I was busy just because spring markets, lots of people were selling, and I was swamped. And then it kind of refinancing and purchases slacked off, especially for jumbo loans, because they said they really tightened up on the regulations and requirements for the loans. And so it slowed down for probably 3 weeks. And then I don't know if they loosened restrictions, but I'm crazy busy again.
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully this continues and we don't see a slump. I know there's a lot of people kind of getting ready to get ready, who weren't sure like what to do. And, I've been advising people to go ahead and do those projects now that we kind of don't have all the social things. Like, let's get the home projects done, even if it's,
I've been busy.
Yeah, even if it's not going out to get stuff to like really change the house, but just clean out, sort through stuff, closets, garages, basements, So.
That's a lot of. I did a refinance last week, and the guy was like, "Excuse the mess," because he said, "This is what I've been doing. I've been cleaning out," and he's like, "And nobody will take donations now." So his entire guest room was piled with stuff that
I think they're starting to. I know someone said they were going to Goodwill the other day, so maybe they're taking them now. So anyway.
But back to the pandemic thing. When I do go in a house, I ask now. I've had homeowners who will wait outside when I come in, and I ask. I always wear a mask. I don't wear gloves because it's hard to take pictures. But I ask all the homeowners turn on all the lights, if they can open all the doors. I don't have to touch anything when I go in the house, and I take my shoes off. And I try to be very careful not to touch anything if I don't have to. Sometimes I flip light switches on with elbows if they haven't left anything on. But I've had some people that are very nervous and they'll sit outside and wait.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I know we've been doing open houses with, just like one group at a time, like a couple or what have you, or an individual, just to keep the numbers down, for both their sake, our sake, and the homeowner's sake,
Yeah,
So,
I did have one agent that didn't want me to come, and the house was vacant, so I was kind of surprised that he didn't want me to come in the house.
mhm.
And then they converted it to a desktop appraisal, but then he was mad because I wasn't coming at all. I was like, well, you didn't want me to come, and now. But I'm very cautious and careful when I go in. I don't, want to. Well, I don't want to. I don't know where these people have been, and they don't know where I've been. So
Right.
I always stand way far away.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't get close, and it's worked out fine.
Right. Well, good. Well, I think Ed had a question.
Yeah. Hi, Amy. Are you seeing an uptick in vacant properties that you're appraising?
Yes,
Okay.
almost every sale that I'd probably say every sale that I've done since March, with the exception of one, has been vacant.
Yeah. And continuing on the pandemic impact on the business, you were mentioning how some investments don't really factor into value like other investments. Obviously,
Right.
people doing fresh carpet or a swimming pool, they spend $250,000, they aren't going to get that in value. Do you, as an appraiser, do you take into effect the recent demand for pools in creating that value? So maybe not the full value of the original investment, but the fact that there's an uptick in people wanting properties with pools, does that factor in?
That would. I haven't done a house recently with a pool, but that would definitely.
Okay.
Things, because you kind of have to go with what the market. Hold on a second, somebody's calling me. Sorry. You have to watch what the market is, what it's willing to bear for something. So if, like in Florida, if you have a house and you don't have a pool, you're in trouble.
Right.
But now
you take into local or short-term demand.
Right. Yes. So definitely a house with a pool now is in much greater demand than it was, last year at this time.
And I do commercial.
Right.
And I know you don't really do commercial, but I have a question that's kind of an offshoot of that goes into residential. So we deal with investors many times that have residential properties that are income producing.
Right.
What do you do in considering that value based on downticks in rent or any market conditions that are impacting tenants' ability to pay rent?
Okay, repeat that for me again. I'm sorry, I'm distracted
Yeah,
by Stacy singing in the background.
So there are many residential properties that are bought strictly for investment. And
right.
So commercial appraisal will use different methods to generate value, including income producing. Will that come into effect, and will market conditions of residential rent come into effect in a time like this as well?
So you're asking about the condition of the property?
Value of the condition of the market. So you have
right.
They're behind on their rent, and so that obviously impacts the projection of income.
Right. I haven't had to deal with that yet because I haven't done any investment properties recently. But I would think yes, because if people you're not going to be able, as a landlord, I know from experience that my dad had in the past, that if they declare bankruptcy, you cannot kick them out.
Yeah.
So
not yet.
Right. No, not yet. I got another email about that the other day. So yes, it would. I think it would be harder, and you would have to take that into consideration because there's a chance that you're not going to receive your rent on that property.
Right.
And I'm sure that the lenders have probably also changed restrictions about loans on investment properties. Like I said, I haven't had to deal with that. I have not done an investment property in a while. So, but I would definitely, because your vacancy, well, it's not going to be vacancy rate. It would be, I don't even know. We don't have, because you have those pre-printed forms that we've had for a million years, and they don't change them that often. And it's like an act of Congress to change one.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I know that
I would have to do something on that end for a loss in.
I sat through a talk with a commercial appraiser recently, and they were talking about factoring in vacancy rate projections once the CARES Act restrictions end.
Right,
and having to have that be a variable into income producing valuations.
Right, I'm sure commercial property has been hit a whole lot harder.
Yeah.
Everybody's working from home, and it's just, I can't imagine.
Oh yeah. So last question I have is, Stacy and/or I like to be there with the appraisal for our listings.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Do you like having the realtor there? What are things that make that a good constructive appointment for your?
I would rather the agent come, and it's so funny. I get agents on both ends. I'll have an agent say, "Oh, just go ahead." You know, they have very little contact with me. They don't send me any information. They don't really want to speak to me other than to know that the appraisal was done and it came in at what they wanted it to come in. And then I have other people like you guys who are very interested, and they want to come. They want to tell me information about the house, and I would rather the realtor be there. If I have a question, if there's something they can point out to me, information that that maybe wasn't, because you guys are limited to what you can put in the listing. So I can't always get all the information just from the listing without, sorry, Slider's trying to give me his toy, but so I would rather meet with the realtor. Just because you get better information, you guys have better knowledge about the house because you've talked with the homeowner, you know what they've done, and I would much rather do that. And usually you guys bring me great comparable sale information, and I'll always take any information I can get. From some realtors, it's not always the best information.
Not useful.
Sometimes they tell me stuff and I'm like, oh, okay, no.
That's not it. Understandable. Yeah. Well,
hold on a second. Get him. He's got a squeaky toy.
So one thing that I was going to say about that, Amy, was that, you know, we've been looking at it probably for weeks or months, talking about them getting ready to get on the market. So we've been looking for the past maybe 3, 4, 5 months. Maybe some people start talking about it a year before they list their house, right? So we're tracking, we're watching, then we're deciding at the last minute. I always tell people, I look at the numbers right at the last minute before we hit that button. Even if we have a signed agreement at like this number, I might say, hey, I need you to initial this because we've decided, you know, the homeowner.
If the neighbor across the street decided to list the exact same house, and then it's exactly the same, and they're going to list it for $50,000 less
or more,
right? Either way, you got to make that last minute decision.
We usually know when we're putting it on the market if we have a seller that's pushing the envelope.
Right.
Yeah.
And we try to be frank with them that we're right at the top.
Right.
Right. So we try to, you know, do it the best we can. And then we see all the offers coming in. We see all the feedback. We know that if people are saying like, wow, I'm writing an offer today, or we see them saying like, hey, we think it's a little overpriced. So we have a good feel. So by the time we're giving that information to the appraiser, we have had like weeks and weeks, maybe months and months of like understanding that specific property. So that's why I always try to say, here, you know, I want you to know what I see, you know. So some people they don't like that, but
I will always take any information given to me, because like I said, because you guys have worked with these people sometimes for that long, so you know, and you're doing market research, because I mean, who wants to list a property too high or too low for that matter? And and if it's too high, it's going to sit, and then you get that stigma of, oh my gosh, you know, it's been on the market for 90 days and there's no offers.
Right.
So if it's listed at the right price, it's going to go faster. And that you guys have better information about the house than I am going to for coming in and being there. I mean, depending on the size of the house, I may be there a half an hour. I may be there 2 hours. It depends, but you're going to have better information about that house than I am.
And I always ask the homeowners to give me a list of their recent updates. And that's, I feel like, always good information, so you know what is updated. And some people, in the past have said, oh, I updated my kitchen, but it was like 10 years ago or something. It's like, it's not updated anymore. So it's hard. It's hard.
It feels new to them, right?
What, Ed?
It feels new to them, even though it was years ago, right?
Yeah, that's my first question when I go in. Well, some people that I deal with have never had an appraisal done before, and then they're shocked when I tell them that I have to come into their house. They're like, well, the last the appraisal I had done, they didn't come in. I was like, well, if you purchased the house, you were not the owner at the time, so I came in when the previous owner was there. But they're shocked that I have to come in, but I do. That's the first question I ask. What have you done to the house?
Right.
And not in the last 30 years, within the last 5, tell me about kitchens and bathroom, anything. Right. I write down everything the homeowner tells me.
Right. That's awesome.
Even if they said that I've replaced a faucet in the half bath, I write it all down. I do.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you're a good appraiser. So
I think it's just, if the underwriter ever comes back and says, I've got all the information there, and I write it all down, and
yeah, that's awesome.
even they tell me things and I smile and shake my head. Okay, yeah, I replaced the inside of that toilet. I write it down.
Yep. Got to do it. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today and all the great info. When we put this up, we are going to put all your contact information so that people can get in touch with you if they'd like tech appraisers to, do an appraisal for them, either before they put it on the market, or maybe they're making a purchase with cash and they'd still like an appraisal. So
I do get that a lot too, that they just want to know, which is good information, that they are not overpaying, or that. And underpaying would be great, but
I don't think in this market.
No. Are you getting multiple contracts on?
Yeah, most of the properties, yes.
I'm seeing that escalation clause again, which is not good for me because it makes my job tougher. But
yeah, I know. So anyway, well, thanks again for joining us. We really, really appreciate it, and we hope to refer you to more clients in the future. And thanks so much for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me, and it was good to see you guys.
You too. See you soon. Bye, Amy.
Bye-bye.
Did you finish recording?